the sleek silence of a Tesla gliding down a highway represents to many the future, a cleaner, smarter, more responsible world. But underneath the smooth acceleration, behind the futuristic dashboard and carbon fiber trim, lies a raw material, so essential, so coveted, that it has ignited a modern-day gold rush across the globe. That material is lithium white gold, and the road to acquiring it is anything but clean. As Elon Musk sells the world on sustainability, somewhere deep in the deserts of South America, the African plains and the Australian outback, a parallel story is unfolding, one of environmental destruction, worker exploitation, political corruption, and corporate silence. In 2010, Tesla was on the brink. Electric cars were a fantasy for most people, a pipe dream, ridiculed by traditional automakers and brushed aside by Wall Street. But Musk had a vision and a ticking clock. If Tesla was to survive, it had to secure the most critical component in its battery technology, lithium. Not just any lithium, but a steady, scalable, and strategically protected supply that would ensure Tesla could dominate not just the EV market, but the entire energy storage industry. To outsiders, Tesla's success looks like innovation. To insiders, it's a race to control the dirtiest clean energy on the planet. The story begins in the Lithium Triangle, an arid, majestic expanse that spans Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile. Here, under the bright skies and over salt flats that look like alien worlds, lie more than 50% of the world's lithium reserves. For decades, these lands were left untouched by global corporations, seen as too remote, too volatile, or too poor in infrastructure. That changed as demand for electric vehicles surged. Tesla didn't just need lithium, it needed it fast, and in vast quantities. Local governments, some desperate for foreign investment, opened their lands to mining companies, many of which now quietly supply raw materials to Tesla's battery partners. At first glance, lithium mining in these regions doesn't look devastating. There are no deep pits, no explosions, just vast geometric pools of brightly colored brine that slowly evaporate under the sun. But the damage is hidden beneath the surface. These operations consume colossal amounts of water in some of the driest places on Earth. In Chile's Atacama Desert, over 65% of the region's water is being sucked out to support lithium extraction. Indigenous communities who have relied on underground aquifers for generations are now watching their wells run dry, their crops wither, and their animals perish. To them, lithium is not green gold, it's a curse. In a small village near Salar de Atacama, a Quechua woman named Maria walks 2 kilometers each day to collect muddy water for her family. 10 years ago, the well near her home was deep and clean. Now, it's dust. She remembers when the mining trucks first arrived. They promised job schools development. What they delivered was noise scarcity and a vanishing way of life. Maria doesn't know the name Elon Musk. She's never seen a Tesla. But she knows that something powerful far away is draining her land and no one is listening. Tesla, like many tech companies, rarely mines materials itself. Instead, it relies on a network of suppliers companies like Albemarle, Livent, and others who operate in the Lithium Triangle. These firms provide the raw lithium that's refined, processed, and ultimately packed into Tesla's batteries. In public statements, Tesla boasts of sustainability ethics and clean energy, but its supplier list remains opaque, shielded by layers of subcontractors and NDAs. Investigators have repeatedly attempted to trace the supply chains and found inconsistencies, denials, and PR walls. It's the perfect system, plausible deniability with clean headlines. Meanwhile, in Bolivia, lithium nationalism has taken a different turn. The country holding the world's largest known lithium reserves chose a state-owned model rather than opening its lands to multinational firms. But this model faced its own problems: inefficiency, lack of infrastructure, and political unrest. When former President Evo Morales tried to sign deals with Chinese battery firms instead of Western giants, protests erupted, followed by a coup that many believe had lithium at its core. The US government denied involvement, but leaked memos and investigative reports suggest deeper geopolitical games were in play. As Tesla expanded, Bolivia's Lithium became a pawn in a much larger game of resource control. In a now infamous tweet from 2020, Elon Musk quipped, "We will coup whoever we want. Deal with it." It was a response to a user accusing him of supporting regime change for lithium. Though said jokingly to many, it was a rare moment of honesty and unfiltered glimpse into the mindset of modern corporate imperialism. Lithium isn't just about batteries, it's about power, literal and figurative. But Tesla doesn't just rely on South America. In Western Australia, lithium mining is booming, often under better regulatory frameworks, but still facing ecological concerns. Massive open-pit mines are turning landscapes into scars, destroying biodiversity and drawing the ire of environmental groups. In Africa, particularly in the Democratic Republic of Congo, cobalt, another critical mineral in Tesla's batteries, is often sourced alongside lithium, involving child labor and militia-controlled zones. Though Tesla claims to audit its cobalt sources, reports from Amnesty International and others paint a murkier picture. Once again, distance and complexity serve as shields. Even in the United States, where Tesla has been pushing for domestic lithium production, the controversy continues. In Nevada, the Thacker Pass lithium mine is being fast-tracked despite fierce opposition from Native American tribes and environmentalists. The area is sacred ground, the site of a massacre, and home to endangered species. But with US lawmakers eager to compete with China's battery dominance, permits are being rushed, objections brushed aside, and money flowing in. As demand for EVs skyrockets with governments pushing for electrification and net zero goals, the pressure on Tesla grows. Every Model 3, every Cybertruck, every new gigafactory needs more lithium. And the faster the company grows, the more corners are cut. Green energy, in theory, is the solution to climate change. But when the race to supply it replicates the same old systems of exploitation, displacement and secrecy, is it really progress, or just a rebranded version of the past? In boardrooms and investor calls, Tesla executives speak of innovation, of humanity's leap forward. But in the deserts of Chile, the hills of Nevada, and the shadows of Congolese mines, a different story is unfolding. It's the story of how one of the world's most celebrated companies may be building the future on the backs of the voiceless, with a silence that speaks volumes. In the boardrooms of Silicon Valley, the conversation around sustainability has been carefully choreographed. Phrases like green energy decarbonization and clean technology dominate keynote speeches, investor presentations, and social media posts. For Tesla, being the face of this movement means more than building cars, it means shaping a narrative. But for a company that claims to be leading a global energy revolution, the truth about how it acquires the most essential resource of that revolution, lithium, has been consistently obscured. This isn't by accident. It's the result of a deliberate, complex architecture of plausible deniability, political maneuvering, and media distraction. While the public was captivated by rocket launches and the futuristic promise of a self-driving car, a quieter, far more consequential operation was unfolding behind the scenes. Tesla began aggressively lobbying US lawmakers for access to domestic lithium reserves, arguing that America's EV future depended on energy independence. In Washington, the appeal was irresistible. Compete with China, create jobs, lead the clean energy race. Lawmakers nodded, bills were drafted, permits accelerated. But what these fast-tracked projects often ignored was local opposition. In places like Nevada's Thacker Pass or North Carolina's Piedmont region, community groups, native tribes, and environmental coalitions voiced their concerns only to be drowned out by lobbyists and tech-driven optimism. Tesla's influence in Washington has grown in tandem with its stock price. Through direct lobbying and through partners like the Battery Materials and Technology Coalition, the company has helped shape policy that prioritizes resource extraction over environmental caution. The Inflation Reduction Act, while billed as a climate solution, includes massive subsidies and incentives for domestic mining policies that benefit companies like Tesla, while sidelining ecological safeguards. Behind closed doors, senators and energy executives meet with little scrutiny, often justifying these moves as necessary sacrifices for the greater good. But the geopolitical dimension of lithium extends far beyond US borders. In China, the government has invested billions into lithium mining in Africa, South America, and even Australia. Through state-backed companies, it now controls a substantial portion of the world's lithium processing capabilities. Tesla, which famously opened a gigafactory in Shanghai, has both benefited from and been caught in the middle of this global tug-of-war. On one hand, it needs China's battery supply chain. On the other, it risks becoming overly dependent on a geopolitical rival. This delicate balance has led Tesla into a silent dance with Chinese regulators, one where criticism is muted, partnerships are prioritized, and questions go unanswered. In 2021, Chinese company Ganfeng Lithium signed a deal with Tesla to supply lithium directly. Ganfeng operates across multiple continents, including controversial mining projects in Tibet and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Reports from human rights organizations have accused some of these mines of violating local sovereignty, evading environmental oversight, and even displacing entire communities. Yet Tesla continues the partnership, maintaining the convenient stance that we trust our suppliers to meet ethical standards. The media, for its part, has often played along. For years, mainstream outlets lauded Tesla as a green tech darling, echoing press releases without rigorous investigation. Critics who questioned the company's practices were dismissed as fossil fuel sympathizers or conspiracy theorists. Independent journalists and environmental watchdogs found it difficult to gain access to restricted sites' mining zones or corporate records. And when stories did break about water depletion in Chile or indigenous lawsuits in Nevada, they were buried under headlines about Cybertruck prototypes and SpaceX launches. But the narrative is starting to crack. In 2022, a whistleblower within a Tesla supplier revealed internal documents showing that the company was aware of environmental violations linked to lithium extraction, but chose to remain silent. The leak also included emails in which executives discussed how to manage public perception rather than address the root problem. "We don't need to fix the mine," one executive wrote. "We just need better PR." The story made it into a few niche outlets, but the damage was limited. Tesla's image machine was too powerful, and its loyal fan base too devoted. This manipulation of narrative extends into Tesla's ESG, environmental, social, and governance reporting. Each year, Tesla releases glowing sustainability reports filled with charts, graphs, and language carefully designed to highlight carbon offsets, recycling efforts, and renewable energy usage. What's rarely included is a clear, traceable map of where and how its lithium is mined. When analysts press for transparency, the answer is always the same. We are working to improve our supply chain disclosures. It's a line that buys time but never delivers change. Meanwhile, opposition is growing. In Chile, indigenous activists are organizing cross-border alliances to demand a moratorium on new lithium extraction. In the US, lawsuits are piling up against mining permits, and legal challenges from native tribes are forcing courts to reckon with decades of broken treaties and ignored land rights. Environmental organizations are launching international campaigns to pressure Tesla and its suppliers to commit to ethical sourcing backed by independent audits. But progress is slow, and the stakes are rising. For the communities directly affected, the struggle is deeply personal. In the Argentine province of Jujuy, protests have erupted against lithium projects encroaching on indigenous lands. One leader, Ana Vilca, said in a recent interview, "They call it clean energy, but they're dirtying our water, our soil, our lives. We're not against technology, we're against being erased." Her voice is one of many rising from the global South regions, rich in resources, but poor in power, exploited again and again in the name of someone else's progress. Lithium may be mined in deserts and jungles, but it's traded on Wall Street. And behind every extraction permit, behind every gigafactory announcement, stands an army of venture capitalists, hedge funds, private equity players, and sovereign wealth managers, all betting on a future built on batteries. As Tesla surged from a scrappy underdog to the most valuable automaker in the world, the financial world swarmed to grab a piece of the action. Goldman Sachs, BlackRock, Vanguard. These giants didn't just buy stock in Tesla. They invested heavily in the global lithium supply chain. What began as a commodity became a frenzy. From 2020 to 2023, lithium prices skyrocketed by over 500%, driven by exploding demand for electric vehicles. Every financial analyst began touting lithium as the new oil, and a flood of speculative capital followed. Tiny mining startups with little more than exploration permits saw their valuations skyrocket. Wall Street financiers packaged and sold lithium-backed derivatives, ETFs, and mining equities, pushing capital into far-flung corners of the globe. The same players who once financed deep-sea oil drilling were now financing lithium mines in Bolivia and Namibia. One of the most influential yet invisible forces behind this surge was a network of hedge funds operating under sustainability investment umbrellas. ESG funds, environmental social governance, were pitched as moral alternatives to traditional investing. But their portfolios told a different story. Many held shares in lithium extraction firms accused of environmental damage. Some financed lobbying efforts that weakened indigenous land protections. Others quietly backed shell companies used to acquire mineral rights in politically unstable regions. Tesla, though not directly involved in mining, benefited immensely from this boom. As long as lithium remained abundant and cheap, regardless of how it could meet its aggressive production targets. And so Tesla formed silent alliances with key stakeholders. A few of its senior executives had backgrounds not just in engineering but in global commodities trading. Their job wasn't just to build cars. It was to manage exposure hedge bets and secure long-term lithium supply through backdoor equity swaps and offtake agreements. In one such case, Tesla inked a secretive deal with a mining company operating in Argentina. On the surface, it looked like a standard offtake agreement. Tesla would buy lithium at a locked-in price for the next decade. But deep within the fine print were equity options, tied not to production volume, but to geopolitical stability in the region. In other words, if protests or indigenous lawsuits delayed operations, Tesla could buy more stock at a discount. Risk wasn't just accounted for, it was monetized. The deeper you look, the more financialization distorts the clean energy narrative. Insurance companies began creating policies for lithium disruption. AI-powered trading algorithms on Wall Street now monitor rainfall in the Atacama Desert to forecast lithium production delays. Investment banks launched reports instructing clients on how to profit from resource nationalism backlash. One memo from a Swiss investment house even advised pay attention to civil unrest near lithium reserves. It's often a sign of undervalued assets. All of this leads back to a haunting contradiction. The green energy future, supposedly born out of ethical responsibility, is being financed, managed, and protected using the same extractive logic that built the oil empires of the past. And just like before, those closest to the ground, indigenous communities, miners, activists, have the least power and the most to lose. Back in California, where Tesla is headquartered, the company continues to polish its image. Sustainability reports, futuristic product launches, celebrity endorsements. They all work to maintain the myth. But within its boardrooms, risk analysts and supply chain strategists are making cold calculations. They're not designing just cars or batteries. They're designing resilience against lawsuits, media scrutiny, and activist pressure. Their job isn't to fix the problems of the world, it's to ensure those problems don't touch Tesla's bottom line. There comes a point in every narrative where the facts become so entangled with power that even truth struggles to breathe. In Tesla's story, that moment has arrived. The company that promised a clean revolution, a future free from fossil fuels, now finds itself caught in the very machinery it vowed to replace. But behind the viral spectacle lies a network of legal and political infrastructure meticulously crafted to keep Tesla's lithium supply flowing with minimal friction. Lobbyists working on behalf of Tesla and its supply chain partners have helped block environmental regulations that would mandate full transparency of sourcing. Through powerful trade organizations, Tesla influences how lithium is classified, how its environmental impacts are measured, and how governments define green manufacturing. In one notable case, lobbying efforts convinced the US Department of Energy to reclassify certain extraction methods as environmentally low impact, despite protests from geologists and conservationists. Perhaps the most alarming piece of this architecture is the creation of ethical smokescreens. These are initiatives, audits, and third-party certifications designed more to soothe public concern than to enforce real accountability. Tesla regularly cites its commitment to the Responsible Minerals Initiative (RMI) and other industry frameworks. But investigative reports have shown that these audits often rely on documents supplied by the mining companies themselves with no independent verification. In several cases, auditors flagged serious concerns only for the findings to be buried or sanitized before reaching the public. In the rare moments when Tesla is directly confronted by journalists, activists, or even shareholders, it responds with promises of improvement, or more often silence. When pressed about working conditions at lithium processing facilities in China, the company simply stated, "We have no comment." When asked about the displacement of indigenous communities in Nevada, Tesla replied, "We comply with all applicable laws." But legality is not morality. And in many of these places, the law itself has been written to protect corporations at the expense of people. Meanwhile, the human cost continues to mount. In the lithium triangle of South America, where Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile converge, water tables are dropping. Local farmers report crops failing, livestock dying, and traditional ways of life vanishing. In Congo, lithium-rich zones are now patrolled by private militias, hired by mining firms, some with tacit approval from corrupt governments. In the US, sacred native land is being drilled under the guise of national energy security. These are not isolated incidents. They are the systemic byproducts of an industry designed to prioritize speed, profit, and innovation above all else. And yet, the world keeps buying. EV sales soar, governments roll out tax incentives, and consumers proudly display their zero-emissions vehicles. Few ask where the raw materials came from. Fewer still are willing to confront the truth that our transition to green is being built on the backs of brown and black communities, that the new world is being bought with the same old playbook, one written in colonial ink and capitalist blood. The final irony is that Tesla could have done it differently. With its market power and public visibility, it could have led a new model, one of true accountability, ethical sourcing, and environmental justice. Instead, it chose convenience. It chose speed. It chose silence. But silence doesn't last forever. As activists grow louder, as whistleblowers become braver, and as consumers become more aware, the myth begins to crumble. The question is no longer just, can Tesla build the future, but what kind of future is it building? The dirty truth behind Tesla's lithium supply is not just a story about one company. It's a mirror held up to our entire society, our hunger for progress, our blindness to consequence, our addiction to innovation without interrogation. And if we don't confront it now, we may find that the price of a cleaner planet was not cleaner at all, just hidden, exported, and paid by those we never bothered to see.